Greetings to you all in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm Dr.Selin Philip. It's an honor for me to be a small part of the Agape Partners Family Summit again, and I'm grateful for what the Lord is doing through Agape Partners International in bringing mental and relational health awareness to South Asian communities worldwide. A special word of thanks to Drs. Thomas Idicula and Leslie Verghese for their commitment to this ministry. In this presentation, I would like to invite you to walk with me through the exploration of a topic that we seldom talk about. This presentation is entitled Silencing the Self, Depression in Women. A few years ago, a young woman in her 20s shared with me that she was feeling beyond sad and felt suicidal because of the loss of her child through miscarriage. She was married, but did not feel the support of her husband in her grief. The material things he bought for her to distract her from the loss did not help. It was only a band-aid on a deep emotional wound. She told me that she would enter the bathroom and cry out loud because no one seemed to be understanding her deep pain. She asked me, "Am I depressed? Am I going to be okay?" And it took a few months of treatment interventions, flavored with active listening and empathy, and couples counseling to help her climb out of the deep pain of depression caused by the loss of her child. She still grieved. No one could take that pain away, but her openness to share her story helped her see the light again, not only within herself, but also within her marriage. This is just one example of millions of women's stories. A recent study conducted by the National Institute of Mental Health showed that the prevalence of major depressive episode was higher among adult females at 10.5% compared to males at 6.2%. In India, among women with depression, the possibility of them dying by suicide is higher than it is in the case of men suffering from the same disorder. According to a study published in the Lancet Psychiatry in 2016, the suicide death rate among women was 2.1 times higher in India than the global average. Research shows the condition is rising most rapidly among teens and young adults. About 36% of girls will experience clinical depression during their teenage years, compared to 13% of teenage boys. Depression and suicidal ideation are public health problems for both men and women and for both boys and girls. We need to address this issue regardless of gender differences. But in this presentation, I would like to focus on the gender gap in depression and how we could address females' concerns from a holistic perspective. What is it about women's inner and outer worlds that creates this vulnerability to the hopelessness and pain of depression? Depression is a complex and multifaceted illness. It is a serious health condition. Depression is a holistic issue. If you are conscious and breathing, you are at risk for depression because as a human being, you think and react to what happens in your life, which in turn affects your biology. And that is the brain and body. Your mind, the core part of who you are, is processed through the brain and body. Everything is connected. The key here is there is an interplay between the biological, psychosocial, and spiritual factors. For example, the social stressors like divorce, the biological or physiological stressors like a miscarriage, or even the birth of a child and the changes it brings to the body can translate into biochemical changes in the brain that could cause depression. We know very well that life is full of ups and downs. Everybody gets the blues from time to time. For most of us, we bounce back from these low moods and get back to enjoying our lives. But for some people, the sense of sadness, emptiness, or hopelessness doesn't dissipate, and it begins to affect how we think, how we feel, and how we act. When these feelings persist, this mood disorder or depression can interfere with daily life, and that can lead to psychological and physical issues. The causes of depression can be multiple: chronic stress, trauma, biological illnesses, broken relationships, grief, and so on. The DSM-5-TR, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which we call the DSM, is the handbook that is used by healthcare professionals in the United States and much of the world as the authoritative guide to the diagnosis of mental disorders. So according to DSM-5-TR, there are two types of depressive disorders that are more unique to women. One is major depressive disorder, which we also see in men, and the other is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Hormone changes during puberty may increase some girls' risk of developing depression. However, temporary mood swings related to fluctuating hormones during puberty are normal. These changes alone don't cause depression. Puberty is often associated with other experiences like the psychosocial spiritual that can play a role in depression, such as emerging identity issues, conflicts with parents, lack of understanding and validation from parents about their children's teenage years and body changes, increasing pressure to achieve in school, sports, or other areas of life, spiritual or religious identity conflict. And we commonly see major depressive disorders and suicidal ideation in adolescent females because of the combination of all these biological, psychosocial, and spiritual factors. Likewise, dramatic hormonal changes transpire during pregnancy, and these can affect mood. A specification of major depressive disorder is with peripartum onset, which means the onset or the beginning of mood symptoms occurs during pregnancy or in the 4 weeks following delivery. Research shows that between conception and birth, about 9% of women experience a major depressive episode. Some women have depression with psychotic episodes where they experience loss of touch with the reality. Peripartum depression is a major illness that needs immediate medical intervention. It occurs in about 10 to 15% of women, and it is often associated with major hormonal fluctuations that influence mood, the responsibility of caring for a newborn, predisposition to mood and anxiety disorders, pregnancy and birth complications, breastfeeding problems, infant complications or special needs, or poor social support. The premenstrual dysphoric disorders transpire a few days before a woman begins her period. For most females with premenstrual syndrome or PMS, symptoms such as abdominal bloating, headache, anxiety, and irritability are minor and short-term. But some females experience severe and disabling symptoms that disrupt their studies, jobs, relationships, or other areas of their lives. Then it becomes a type of disorder that requires psychological or psychiatric treatment. Scholars are still trying to find out the exact interaction between depression and PMS, but it's a possibility that cyclical changes in estrogen, progesterone, and other hormones can disrupt the function of brain chemicals such as serotonin that control mood. Hereditary characteristics and lack of social and family support could add to the pain of depression. Two other biological changes and phases that can cause depression in women are perimenopause or menopause. The risk of depression increases in these phases. These are two phases when the hormone levels fluctuate rapidly. Most women who have these hormonal changes don't experience depression, but some women do. The factors that may increase the risk of depression in these phases are lack of sleep, stressful life events, and lack of social and family support. As you have probably noted in this presentation so far, studies have found repeatedly that one of the risk factors in depression is poor social and family support. This means depression is not due to biological changes alone. The oppression of women by some religious and cultural traditions have caused negativity and low self-esteem in many women. The work overload of women can be another major risk factor. For example, women who work outside home full-time also are expected to manage home responsibilities without any assistance. Women who care for their young ones at home full-time sometimes don't get a break for self-care. Some women who encounter single motherhood work multiple jobs to make their ends meet while caring for their young ones. Some women care for their little ones while caring for their sick or older family members without any assistance. This can be taxing to a woman's mind and body. Adverse experiences like domestic violence and sexual abuse have led some women to deep depression and even suicide. Then we add the biological changes to her stressors, we often meet a depressed and anxious woman. How do we address this public health problem from a biopsychosocial spiritual viewpoint? Number one, talk to a professional. A psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor will listen to you and allow you to feel the pain you're experiencing and will teach you healthy ways to manage your low mood and stress. Strategies may include talk therapy alone or a combination of talk therapy and medication. The second point, be open and honest about depression. I understand that it is not always easy to admit you are not okay, especially when it comes to long-term feelings of sadness and depression. Therefore, we need to create safe spaces where people can admit that they're not in a good place, where they can acknowledge and face their pain and mental distress without judgment and fear of shame. We need to destigmatize sadness in our communities. Sometimes life is really tough, and sometimes it makes us feel sad and depressed. When we accept that life brings sad circumstances, we can better deal with and face the dark times because we know that it is okay to feel this way. Apostle Peter encourages us so gently in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice in so far as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. The third point is understand that expressing our feelings is important. Depression just doesn't happen. Depression is a progressive illness. It is important to pay attention to how we feel mentally and physically and practice self-awareness so that we can heed the warning signs before the feelings of depression get worse and overtake our lives. The fourth point is care for yourself. Only you can understand your body. Listen to your mind, body, and your spirit. Get adequate sleep. Get exercise and eat healthy. Sometimes working on small physical things like diet and exercise can help lay the foundation for dealing with root mental causes of depression. The fifth point is be prepared for the battle. Just like preparing for a test or meeting we know is coming up, be ready for the sad and depressing moments in life. We need to expect the hard times, not just the joyful moments. There are some mental care tools you can use to manage your thought and emotional life because our thoughts can affect our body, mind, and spirit. Find the negative thought patterns and identify the core beliefs you have of yourself. Ask questions to yourself. Are these thoughts true? Or are they lies I believe about myself? Or the lies someone else told me? Can what someone said define me? And then learn from past failures and mistakes. Never allow yourself to ruminate over them. Move onward with strength and courage. Do deep breathing exercises even when you sit and relax so that your brain will remember what to do when you are under stress. Prepare for the battle on your knees. Prayer is a key element in flushing out our negative thoughts and feelings. May Jesus be your best friend. The sixth point is know that healing takes time. If depression is a progressive state of mind or illness, often healing also takes time. It is a journey. A neuroscientist I know often says that it takes around 21 days to just start rewiring and reconceptualizing a single negative thinking pattern, and 63 days to establish a new mental habit. We cannot change our thoughts overnight, even if we wanted to, unless God does a supernatural intervention in our mind and body. And of course, he can do that in a fraction of a second. But the Bible calls us to renew our minds every day as part of our sanctification, healing, and transformation. The seventh point and the final point is understand the power of your identity. How we perceive ourselves impacts how we process and understand what happens to us. Do you ever feel invisible in your family or in your church or workplace? Like no one sees your pain and you struggle with who you really are? Do you ask questions to yourself? Am I valuable? Am I worthy to be noticed? These kinds of thoughts often lead to self-silence and depression. See, we are wired for connection. Our deepest desires that God has put in us as human beings are to be known and loved fully as we are. And these questions matter. When you are in a chronic state of stress and pain and don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, you may also wonder, does even God see me in my pain? I want to share with you one of my favorite stories in the Bible, the story of Hagar. Life was quite difficult for Hagar as she was living with a woman who considered her as a rival. Hagar was a sad, lonely, invisible woman who had a very difficult life. In Genesis chapter 16, we read that she became a borrowed mother for Abraham and Sarah, who received the promise from God that they would bear a child. Hagar made some poor choices in loading her pregnancy over the barren Sarah, but Sarah made Hagar's life so difficult that she ran away into the desert. We see that an angel of the Lord speaks to her and urges her to return to Sarah. In verses 7 to 9, Hagar had a personal and powerful encounter with the Lord of the universe as she was resting beside a spring. He called her by her name. He said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from? Where are you going? The Lord knows her name, her status as a servant, and her mistress's name. God has not forgotten her. It's interesting to note that in the text, Abraham and Sarah never call Hagar by her name. She's just the servant girl. But God calls her by name because he is her creator. He knitted her in her mother's womb. She is precious to him. They think of Hagar as a slave and foreigner, but God looks at her as a person, a woman whom he has called for his divine purposes. Another powerful encounter happens in her response to the angel. She marvels that God knows about her and cares about her at all. And in her joy, she becomes the only character in the Bible to actually name God, man or woman. In verse 13, she says, you are the God who sees me, El Roy. May that sit with you for a bit. God calls Hagar by her name, her true identity. When she knew the power of her identity and that she was someone whom God took notice, that she was created in his image, she marveled and called him the name El Roy. Her identity so far in this story were a woman, a foreigner, a slave, a runaway. She was alone, afraid, and abandoned. If anyone felt invisible, it must have been her. But now she is Hagar, the mother of Ishmael. Hagar adds to her marvel, truly, here I have seen him who looks after me. The Message translation says, yes, he saw me and then I saw him. Hagar sees God too. She stops running away and looks him full in the face. She turns to the one who extends her mercy, love, and grace. Eventually, we know that Hagar lives as a free woman and no longer a slave. The God who saw Hagar sees you. Are you feeling invisible today? Are you a weary traveler on this journey called life? Are you wondering if God really sees you in your pain? Would you take comfort from the story of Hagar? He is El Roy, the God who sees you. Do you know a woman, a sister, who you think feels invisible, who longs for sharing her deepest pain with someone? Would you reach out to her? Would you share the burden with her and show her the God of Hagar, the one who sees her as she is? Whether you're someone who suffers from depression or someone who is a family member or a caretaker, regardless of gender differences, I want to encourage you. May Jesus give you time and space to feel your hurts, heal your inner wounds, and grieve your losses. May he bring your loved ones closer and love you right where you are and who listens to your deepest longings. May you dare to dream again in the midst of your pain. May you not spend time in self-pity because you have the promises of God. You have the presence of God. He has a great purpose for you. You won't stay in this valley forever. You're walking through this valley, which means you will come to the other side safely. Thank you all for listening. Blessings to you all.
The Agape Partners Family Empowerment Summit is scheduled for Saturday, July 2nd and 9th. APA Summit is a unique online summit that empowers leaders, pastors, counselors, parents, couples with relevant insights and practical skills to strengthen your family from a Christian perspective. The theme of the summit is Fruitful Living in Difficult Times. You will hear from leading Christian psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, and ministers about faith, mental health, and family. Last year, over 500 participants from 15 countries who participated in the summit. This year, the topics include Christian response to mental health and counseling, women and depression, overcoming negative emotions, thoughts, and behavior, medications and therapy in mental illness, and so on. You will experience a breakthrough event that honors Christ and presents the Bible-based approach to having a fruitful living in this world. This is a great opportunity to learn practical tips to reach out to those who are hurting and restore hope and purpose in life. Registration deadline is June 30th. The Zoom capacity is 500. Save the date and register today at eventscoded.com/agape summit. See you on July 2nd. God bless you.